Hi, my name's Lewis. I'm a scanning tech here at the lab. I'm 26 years old, and today I'm going to be reviewing this photo book called Loving, A Photographic History of Men in Love from the 1850s to the 1950s. This book's important to me because I came out as gay when I was 22 years old, and I had never seen a positive representation of a queer person in the media. I had never seen like even a happy couple or a happy person. It was always a villain or like a snarky person. Really no one that I would consider a role model. I came across images from this book on Pinterest, and I didn't know they were from this book. I just thought they were like super rare images that no one had seen before. But then this past December, I was at the Museum of Modern Art in San Francisco, in the gift shop, of course, and I saw this book, this big, thick book, with a lot of those images that I had seen from Pinterest and a lot more that I had never seen before, and I just had to have it. This collection came to be, there was a couple, well, there still is this couple living on the East Coast, Hugh, Nini, and Neil Treadwell, a couple. One day they were antiquing and they found a photograph of two men showing affection, and from the 1850s to the 1950s, this old photograph, and thought they came across a real treasure, something they hadn't seen before. As they continued to antique that year, they came across more images, and it became clear to them that photos like this did exist. They just needed to be found. And so it became kind of a project and a fascination for them to basically go to the ends of the earth to collect these photographs, to give them a home where they could be protected and preserved, rather than just collecting dust in a roadside antique shop. So Hugh, Nini, and Neil Treadwell, after many years, had amassed a huge quantity of these, and they were working with dealers from all over the world to collect these photographs. One day they were showing a dealer some of the photographs that they had. The dealer was shocked with just the amount of photographs that they had and knew that they needed to publish this because there wasn't another collection like this, and surely not another like published collection like this. Because throughout time, like what was an acceptable form of affection has changed. There were photographs where you couldn't look at it and just know explicitly that these people were gay or in a relationship. And so Hugh and Neil kind of created this rule called the 50% rule. In their own words, they said, when deciding whether or not to acquire a photo or snapshot, we have a rule that we follow. We call it the 50-50 rule. We have to believe that it's at least 50% likely that we're looking at two men who are romantically involved. There are few 50-50 images in our collection and none in our book. You see a photograph of a man and a woman, a heterosexual couple, you don't say, oh, they're cousins or they're friends. Immediately our mind goes to, oh, they're married or they're dating. They're romantically involved in some way. That's just the heteronormative world we live in. That's what the media we've all consumed our whole lives, the history of the world. But then you see a photograph of two men, of course, oh, they're just buddies, they're just friends. There's no way they could be a couple. But looking at these images, it's clear that there's something more going on than just friendship. Because of like the nature of this collection, there isn't a very clear record of like name of subjects or the photographer. Not a lot of people back then came out or admitted that they were gay, and they surely didn't like write it down on a photograph as like evidence. But one of my favorite stories from this book is a couple from World War II. Looking at the first image, you can just maybe say, oh, they're like wartime buddies. Here, if you can see that. And so Hugh and Neil saw that photo and they were like, okay, like, is this anything? But then they came across 150 more images taken of this couple in their infantry. And this one in the snow in the Alps. Pretty telling. Both of them are wearing rings, in kind of like a spooning position. But that's not really just like regular friend behavior. The infantry that they were a part of, the 42nd Infantry, is called the Rainbow Infantry. And of course, at that time, it had no significance, but it's just kind of like a funny coincidence. And this 42nd Infantry was the infantry that went on to liberate Dachau, the concentration camp. So pretty cool. So throughout their collecting of all these images, they noticed a lot of similarities, which is interesting because there's no way that the subjects and photographers within this volume knew each other. It spans 100 years. It spans the whole globe. It was interesting to find that posing underneath an umbrella was kind of worldwide, like a subtle way to say, here we are under the umbrella together. Another sign or symbol in these photographs is the use of rings, where a wedding ring would be. Of course, it wasn't legal at the time. Another tell-all sign was the fact that they even posed for these photographs. It wasn't like the iPhone era, the digital era, where you could just take a photograph. The fact that the image exists is evidence itself that this was something special worth photographing. But my first thought when I saw this was, oh, evidence. Like, this is evidence for anyone who believes like that queerness, that being gay is a fad or a new idea. This is from the 1850s. This is a tintype photograph of someone like me, someone who existed. It's like impossible to put a value on that. Like, it's truly invaluable. Like, the reason we look at these images, we look at this book and we're kind of surprised or we're shocked is because we've never seen images like this before. We've seen plenty of photographs from the early 1900s of heterosexual couples, but these images would have been hidden away. These would have been, under the mattress or, hollowed out in a book, somewhere. Like you see, like these weren't images that you'd put in the family album. There was going to be a lot of shame attached with these. There was going to be social repercussions if anyone even viewed this image. The oldest photograph in this book is 70 years old. Or, excuse me, the youngest photograph in this book is 70 years old. And so the youngest potential subject would be 90 years old. They couldn't just publish this, 30 years ago when these people were 60 years old and maybe married to women, because they could be ruining lives. Some of my favorites are at the beginning, the tintypes. I don't know why. Again, it kind of goes back to the evidence thing where I'm like, the older the image, like the stronger the case is. And it's kind of like me building a case against anyone who would come to me and say my identity isn't real or it's like a fad or a trend. And so I like this one. I think it's from 1893 because it has a big 93 written on it. Oh, it's this. Oh, 1898. So I really like this one. I think it's at the seashore, or that's like a painted backdrop. Either way, it's kind of like a nautical scene. Etched in here is 98, and it's obviously not 1998, it's 1898. So I mean, that's pretty crazy just to see like an image from 1898, let alone like two men like posed in the studio together as like sailors. I really like this one as well. I think this is one of the only photographs in the book of like anyone of color. And I think that's probably because of like economic inequality, just like access to a camera. But here we have two soldiers posed in a very obvious pose. So I really like that one. I'm glad that it's included and I'm glad that it exists. And I wish that people of color, like more images of them actually existed in this book. Because surely there were, like queer people of color throughout time. This one's kind of fun. Looks like it could be JFK or a contemporary, on Long Island, enjoying themselves. This next one's my absolute favorite one, though. These two guys sitting on the back of a motorcycle. I just think it's really badass. Like out in the open, too. Like it wasn't like in a garage or something. It's just like outdoors, like the look of happiness on their faces. I just think this is a really important photograph, and one that moved me a lot when I first saw it. And then this last one, and there's hundreds in here. Like, it's not like I only like 4 images out of the whole thing. But I really liked this one because like the setting, it's like something I would like to take today if I was doing bridals. Oh, let's find a waterfall and like have some like really leafy, ferny like bouquet for this. It's interesting like how contemporary it looks. Like you could see this in like Utah Valley Bride or something like today. Gay people, just like us, you know, just like everybody else. Like it's something that you could easily see like a heterosexual couple like posing like this as well. So in order for these photographs to exist, there had to be 1, a photographer willing to shoot this, and 2, a lab that was willing to develop and not just like destroy these as soon as they saw, you know, the images that were rendered. These photographs, it wasn't something you could just like set up a tripod and do yourself. So I think it took a lot of bravery, 1, to pose, to actively like be gay in a photograph, and then 2, to trust it to a photographer and to a lab to let other people see this. Another thing, or something that I found very interesting, were the photos in this book that came from photo booths. So the advent of the photo booth really created a safe space for the people in these photographs because you were able to be the subject, the photographer, and the developer, all behind the safety of a curtain. And so you'll see a lot of images in this book that are from photo booths. I'm sure they were very grateful to have that opportunity. And I think we take that for granted today with like how much we can shoot just from our iPhone. On paper, things have changed legislation-wise. I mean, 2015, Abergefell versus Hodges, huge landmark Supreme Court case giving same-sex couples the right to marry, which is major, was huge. Like, just having equal treatment in the eyes of the law. You know, if you die, your partner keeps the house rather than is homeless, or gets to adopt your child, or, you know, be included in your will. Like, these are major protections that just weren't available before. In a lot of ways, I don't think the world has changed. Even like preparing to film this, I was unsure about it just because I read any comment on anything, like literally anything on the internet, and there's the F slur, there's 20 to 30 comments saying our country's really, you know, gone downhill, gone to shit. It's scary. It really is scary. And it's not snowflake behavior or me being sensitive or people being oversensitive. It's like actual acts of violence happening every single day just for people being themselves. And it's not something that has happened since 2015. It's something that's been happening since 1850, something that's been happening since the Roman Empire. This is something that exists, and any amount of violence won't change that. And so I would say history hasn't really changed. Like, it's still a continuous like fight just to like take up space to exist. And I think being photographed is a big part of that. It's like kind of what I said earlier. It's evidence. Like, here I am. Here's evidence of my joy. Here's evidence of my vitality of my life. Evidence that I did this thing, that I loved this person. And I think it's really important to not make yourself small, to not shy away, to pose for the photograph, if that makes sense, to knowing the consequences, still saying, no, like, you can't erase me from history. There's years of my life when I was younger, when I was a teenager, where I just refused to be photographed. I love taking photographs, but I don't like necessarily posing for them or being on camera, so you're lucky you're getting me today. I think it's important to, accept that your life is worth remembering, that the people in your orbit, your friends, your family, like, these are people, these are events that are worth, you know, sharing with other people, worth keeping a record. Because if you're not doing it, like, who is? Like, if you're not for yourself, like, no one is. Yeah, if you find an old photograph, first of all, get it out of the dust, get it out of the humidity, get it framed or get it archived. If you're finding negatives, get those scanned, get those digitized. Like, get high resolution versions of those on your hard drive. Getting those scanned and then printed is a great way to, like, keep history alive. Whether you're gay or you're straight, your story matters, and you should have photographs of the things you love and the people you love. I love scanning slides. It's fun to, like, look into the past, because of course this isn't, like, people that I know, but it's very cool to see kind of that common thread of humanity, to scan slides and say, oh, that's what the 80s were like. Yeah, we take great care of slides and old negatives here, because it's just like if it was our own images, our own family heirlooms, like, that's what we strive to do. If you want to learn more about our process in archiving old negatives or slide film, check out our video with our lab manager, Noelle, where she scans and talks about some of her own family images and why preserving them and getting those scanned to digital is so important.